You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. Hulk, smash.
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me.
Here's Johnny. What do you want? Hey, motherfucker.
You never go ass to mouth.
Now what is so damn funny?
And here we go.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight.
The Force will be with you. Always.
But the truth! You can't handle the truth! Showtime, everybody! Showtime!
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the For Real Movie Club. I am your host, Chris, the Dace Man Dace, and joining me this evening from Deptford, New Jersey, and the CEO and founder of Fanboys Anonymous, Tony Mango.
Woo! Applause.
Also joining us from Deptford, New Jersey, Sam Lassio.
My old chanter.
And a name that I consistently screw up, Eddie Siqueira.
No, that was good.
Yes!
And you didn't even know where I'm from.
Brazil?
Yeah, but be specific.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not that good.
Wait, did you say Eddie Shakira?
No, I didn't get that bad.
I'm gonna guess Brazil.
No, you got it right. You got it right.
If you're anywhere near Rio de Janeiro, then that works. But Brazil's kind of...
Yeah, I'm as near to Rio as you guys are to, like, Richmond, Virginia.
You're from Wakanda, aren't you?
Speaking of Wakanda, we're going to be doing Phase 1 movies today on the For Real Movie Club, and we're going to kick off with the first of the Phase 1 franchise that didn't even realize it was going to be in Phase 1, Iron Man. Let's start with you, Tony. What were your initial thoughts on 2008's film, Iron Man?
Iron Man is awesome. He is not an A-list star back when they made the movie, but he was always a character that I thought was really interesting, and as somebody who doesn't follow the comics in general, I didn't know too much about the backstory of Iron Man, and I started to get a little bit more into it after seeing this. Now, of course, I can name, who the Ghost is, and Spy Master, and Madam Mask, and all that other kind of crap, but if they would have done anything other than as good as this movie was, the MCU wouldn't exist. Awesome movie.
Eddie, what were your thoughts on the Iron Man film in 2008?
I was really surprised because back when the first, credible superhero movie came out in 2002, that was Spider-Man, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So technology is helping out. People are getting more interested in these hero movies because they're getting better writers and stuff. But when Iron Man came out, I was like, whoa, dude. I was like, I never gave a crap about the comics. I mean, I did, of course, when I was a kid, but I just kind of ignored it for a long time. And then one day I just saw it for some reason. I was never going to watch this movie, and then I did. And then I thought it was hilarious. In a good way, because I thought Robert Downey Jr. just nailed the role. And I liked it. So far, it's probably my favorite movie of the Marvel Universe.
Sam, what were your initial thoughts on Iron Man?
Well, my initial thought was, God, I really hope I'm not late for prom after seeing this movie. But then afterward, once I actually was sitting there watching it, I was like, wow, there's a superhero, and he's an asshole, but I'm actually loving the movie. Like, every other superhero up to this point was either like Spider-Man, where it's like, wow, I have a lot of problems, but I need to be the hero. Or you had ones like Daredevil, where this is my mission, I gotta do it. Or the X-Men, where it's like, this is my mission, I gotta do it. Then you get Robert Downey Jr., who just has a problem, so he throws money at it, and then goes and scores, like, the Maxim cover models. So, like, this was a very different kind of movie for its time. And like Tony had said, if they hadn't nailed it, the MCU probably would have died.
Sam, we'll stick with you. One thing we talk about here on the For Real Movie Club is casting. There are two faces that'll return further into the franchise that we'll speak later on in the show and eventually next month on the For Real Movie Club, as in Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark / Iron Man and Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. Not to mention Terrence Howard taking a one-time stab at Brody and Jeff Bridges as the main antagonist being Stain.
That's Brody? He was in Clerks?
Yes.
Congrats on those guys.
Sam, what are your thoughts on casting?
Well, considering I was born in 1990, when I heard Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man, I was like, who's that? And then I had to look at him and be like, oh, so he was like a star in the 80s. and some of the 90s where I wasn't like crapping myself. So I was like, okay, Robert Downey Jr., sure. Dug a little deeper, found he had a little bit of a drug past. I was like, okay, this will probably just be whatever. And now I'm sitting here wondering, wow, who else could they possibly have found to be Tony Stark? Like, he's just Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. are now literally the same person. Like, it's almost they're interchangeable. So we almost can't imagine a world where Robert Downey Jr. is not Iron Man. As far as Gwyneth Paltrow, before 2008's Iron Man, I kind of just seen her like sporadically here and there. She was never the focal point in movies I was watching. Saw her in like a romantic comedy or two. She did fantastic. Like, I had no expectations, good or bad, for her going into it, but I thought she was great for the role. Are we doing Terrence Howard now, or are we just doing the first two?
You could do Terrence Howard and Jeff Bridges as well.
All right, Terrence Howard, man, like, okay, just watching it for the first time, it's like, wow, he's pretty good as Rhodey. Like, I can see how this is his military best friend kind of a thing. But he's definitely no Don Cheadle. In retrospect, it's almost like we're laughing while we're watching it, like, next time, baby. It's like, no, man, not for you. And then Jeff Bridges, like, okay, the dude is fucking like the villain in this movie. Okay, the kid from Tron is now the bad guy. So it was interesting. But Jeff Bridges, I think, was a great one-time villain. I'm kind of glad he died, not because I don't think he could have carried into the second one at all, but just his story. I'm glad it ended there, and we didn't have spillover with Iron Man 2 at all with that character.
Tony, what were your thoughts on the casting for Iron Man?
Casting is like as perfect as you can get for a movie like this. Yeah, it's been said before a million times. Robert Downey Jr. is as iconic as Tony Stark as you could possibly get. The whole idea that they were going to cast Tom Cruise now, in retrospect, seems like, what the fuck? That never would have worked. Tom Cruise is charming, but he's charming in a completely different way than Robert Downey Jr. is. And seeing him on screen with somebody like, say, Clark Gregg, he is, just kind of like somebody who pops up here and there throughout the film, ends up becoming a real solid glue to the universe. But they play off each other, and you could only do that with people that seem like they're sort of on par with one another. Tom Cruise would have just kind of been above him, and he would have been above all the other people too in this movie in a different way. Good actor and whatever, but you needed people that kind of all seemed like they came from the same source. And Gwyneth Paltrow didn't feel like that at first to me when they announced that she was going to be, the primary love interest. I remember hearing a lot that it was going to be Rachel McAdams, and I'm a huge Rachel McAdams fan because she's gorgeous. So I was sort of rooting for her, and when they announced Gwyneth Paltrow, I was like, is she a little old? But she ended up nailing that too. Jeff Bridges is awesome as a guy who is trustworthy enough, but something's going on there. And he delivers one of the best lines in the entire film. The whole Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave.
With a box of scraps.
That's just amazing. Terrence Howard, man, we were joking about this when we were doing our marathon. He just comes off like a creepy guy. He's like a pedophile or something. And Don Cheadle, it seemed like a mistake at first to me that they were going to recast the character, and I would have been on board with Terrence Howard sticking around despite the kind of creepiness, but Don Cheadle knocks it out of the park later on. And the group of the people that they had working on this film, being able to play off each other instead of just being thrown into the mix as like, your cast is this because you're a name, and your cast because you're a name. They were cast as names, sure, but they were cast because they had a good camaraderie together, and that really, really shows throughout the film.
Eddie, what are your thoughts on casting?
Yeah, I agree with Tony. There's nothing they could have done to make it better. They really, it's, the stars align. I say this over and over with certain films, certain projects, and Iron Man is one of those cases with Robert Downey Jr. Like, the guy, it's just one and the same as Iron Man, and I can't even tell the difference anymore. Sometimes you see a press conference with Robert Downey Jr. and I'm like, is that Tony Stark or is he doing a character or like I'm not sure.
Sherlock.
Sam, yeah. And as far as Jeff Bridges, yeah, awesome one-off villain. I wouldn't want to see him again as a villain. Just he's the dude, man. And he's got that weird kind of voice accent thing. He's very unique, and I think it worked in Iron Man, but I don't know, just because I think he was a good opposite to Tony Stark.
Now, go ahead. Sorry.
Go on.
Go ahead.
Okay. As far as Terrence Howard, I couldn't give two dams, but it worked. He was just there doing what he had to do.
You could give one damn.
Okay, I'll give one damn. he was good. It's just when he was way too way too in the background compared to the dude and Iron Man. And as far as Gwyneth Paltrow, she's that kind of a hot in a non-vulgar way. So I like her. And I think she's a good actress. She's done some good stuff. I think the most notorious one she ever did was Shakespeare in Love. But other than that, I guess maybe not too much. But I like the casting a lot.
Some facts before we move on to our next topic of discussion. It was released May 2nd, 2008 with a runtime of 126 minutes and a budget of $140 million. The box office was $585.1 million, and what really kicked off Phase 1. Eddie, we'll start with you on this one. When it comes to the Iron Man comics and when it comes to the Iron Man film, do you feel that the film did it justice?
I wish I could say something about that, but I don't know jack about the comics.
Fair enough.
I mean, nothing. I mean, maybe I had when I was a kid, maybe I bought one or two Iron Man comics just because when you're a kid, you have to buy comics. I played some video. I mean, I remember playing the Avengers video game. I think it was on the Game Boy. And that's it. That's all I know about Iron Man in the comics. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it did it justice. I mean, made the suit look really cool.
Sweet. Sam, what are your thoughts? Did the movie do justice to the comic?
There's two ways to answer that. The first is, did it stick to the source material? And this movie completely did not stick to the source material. All sorts of things were changed. From the war Tony got his accident into, to it being the arc reactor, just that thing in his chest instead of like a full torso metal part, to just the look of the suits, to everything is just different from the comic books. The second answer to that is it was so good that you saw the Iron Man comics become more like the Iron Man movies as time went on. The movies became so influential that the comics, in order to become more popular, changed. So that tells you just how amazing this movie is.
Tony, what are your thoughts on the transition from paper to film?
Sam touched on it, that there's a bit of a divide. They don't translate everything directly, but instead they improve on it. Yinsen wasn't a character that was from the Middle East. He was, I believe, Chinese.
Yeah, his name was Yen Sin.
Mm-hmm. And they obviously needed to adapt that, and they took the arc reactor. They made that not only something that was much more intelligent, but simpler. And every little thing that they tweaked, they did it in the spirit of the comic books. Like, you've seen a lot of comic book movies over the years before this and actually a couple that are still going around afterward. I mean, Fantastic Four looks like it's kind of running into the 2002 range instead of the 2015 range. But that they took these ideas, they said, look, we can't do this, we can't do that, that's too comic booky, and we can't have, the old Batman movies, for instance. I love the Tim Burton Batman movies, but they would take ideas and they would go, well, we can't really have the Penguin be, like a mobster or something, can we? Why don't we make him like a gruesome monster instead? And slowly over the years, we've been seeing these different movies come out. You know, The Dark Knight and the Batman Begins kind of films. They took aspects and they kind of improved it. And this came out right around the same time, where they took what was the spirit of the Iron Man character and they said, look, let's just improve this for the 21st century. Let's make this to where it makes a lot more sense. It keeps the same ideas in general. You know, he gets involved in the war, and that's why he has his accident. He's a dick. He's rich. He's got the suit and whatever. But they tweaked little things. You know, they could have gone the route of the bodyguard, which has been a long thing in the comics. But instead, they were like, you know what? We don't want to go through an entire movie where people think that he's just got a bodyguard that's Iron Man. So let's just have him throw the reference out there and then throw it right out the fucking window and just be like, no, I am Iron Man. We're going straight to Civil War, motherfucker. So it's definitely in the spirit of the comics. And the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe in general has taken this approach where they don't need to do a direct adaptation to keep the same spirit going. And it's so much better.
Tony, we'll stick with you as we wrap up Iron Man. What were your final thoughts, high point, low point, and a rating 1 to 10?
Iron Man is either my favorite or my second favorite out of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe that we've seen so far. Now, of course, Age of Ultron's coming up. That might blow that out of the water. Who knows? But this is an incredibly strong film. Probably overall the best movie of the bunch. The only other one that matches up is Winter Soldier. But amazing movie. Out of a 10, of course, none of the movies, and this is something I say for every For Real Movie Club, almost no movie is ever going to get a 10 out of 10, because if you weigh it on Oscar worthiness and stuff like that, it's really tough. But if you factor in fan service and you factor in how much of a movie it is to enjoy versus the good parts, and the good parts too, I gotta go 9 out of 10. Iron Man is just an awesome movie. Favorite and least favorite parts and stuff, high points and low points and all that, I don't think I can say a single low point about this movie. Maybe if I have to stretch, maybe it's a little bit of the Rhodey character just kind of standing around and not really doing all that much. I know that they couldn't fit that in there without doing everything. That's why they did the whole next time baby and last time for Terrence Howard. But that would be the only weak point, I guess. But high point is actually the very, very, very end. Sitting through an awesome film, you're just blown away. The credits are going by. You're listening to, you know, the whole da 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 da, and you're like, fucking awesome movie. Wait, the hell? What the hell is this? Nick fucking Fury? Amazing. Set the precedent for every movie afterward to have an after credit scene. Now they have 2. Just that blew me out of the water, and that was the start of all the crazy shit we're gonna keep talking about.
Eddie, what were your high point, low point for the film, final thoughts, and rank 1 to 10?
Well, the high point is the fact that it feels like it's a constant piece of entertainment. I mean, I was never bored with this film, not for 1 second. And I'm really, really strict with these kind of movies. Usually when there's too much fighting, too much explosion, or action scenes, I just go, oh man, it's starting to get boring. That didn't happen with Iron Man. I don't know. There's something quirky. You know, the jokes keep coming from Robert Downey Jr. and it was well written. So the high point is the movie's really, really good as a whole. The low point, I did inevitably go like, oh man, that was so not happening in real life, you know. But it's just some things about the way physics work. You know, I start to think of realistic terms. I'm like, man, he would never survive a fall like that, no matter how strong his suit of steel is. Especially when he like blows out of that cave in his first suit into the sand. I'm like, there's no way he would have survived. But whatever, I let it slide. I'd give it an 8 because it's really bold. It took superhero movies to the next level. Like I mentioned, Spider-Man before, it was really good. And then Fantastic Four, I thought it was all right. I thought Fantastic Four was all right. But this is the first one that's like, okay, this is some serious shit going on. Iron Man, bang! I give it an 8.
Sam, what were your final thoughts, high and low, and a ranking 1 to 10?
Final thoughts were this was the perfect way to kick off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. High point for me has got to be his first fight with the suit, when he goes over and he like fights those guys the first time, saves the kid and his father and all that. That to me, and there's no almost more iconic shot to me than when the tank blows him out of the sky, shoots the missile, he kind of moves for a second, shoots a tinier little missile at it, and just blows it sky high. That to me is the iconic shot of the movie. Like Tony had said, to get a low is going to be really stretching. For me, if I had to pick it, it wouldn't be Rhodey so much as it felt like they didn't know what to do with, what was the guy's name? Raza? Like they wanted to tease that, like, the Mandarin and the 10 Rings, but then they had Stain go in there and, like, kill the guys. You didn't actually see Raza die, so they could have used him later. But that whole, we were hired to kill Tony Stark, we didn't kill Tony Stark, that kind of felt like like, should have had either Raza be the bad guy or not even introduce him and just make Stain the bad guy. It almost felt like they didn't know which bad guy they wanted to go with at some point.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys for sharing on Iron Man. For those of you listening, make sure you go to our next video where we will jump a month ahead and talk about the Incredible Hulk here on the
No, wait.
What? No?
This movie is so cool. I have to say, this is the best soundtrack in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Iron Man.
There you have it, folks. So stick around. Make sure you check out our next video here on the For Real Movie Club, The Incredible Hulk, another 2008 film. Stick around.